comments? Hello, everybody, and welcome to our webinar, Investing in Clean Community Energy Resilience. My name is Duran. I work with the Climate Center, and I will be your host today. I've just got a couple of minutes of introductory comments, and I'm going to turn it over to Kurt Johnson, my colleague and the manager of our Clean Energy Community Energy Resilience Program, in order to set some context before we turn to our incredible speakers. So I'm just going to get started here with a little bit of a screen share, and I'm glad you're all here. Welcome to our webinar. Once again, my name is Duran, and you are at Investing in Climate Action for Jobs, Health, and Equity. This is a webinar series that we've been running for a few months. Many of you have attended some of these previous webinars. For some of you, this is your first one. We'd like to welcome you. Today's topic is community energy resilience. I do want to point out that this is part of a series. We do still have 3 webinars left: Investing in Workers for a World Beyond Fossil Fuels, followed by a webinar in building electrification, and one on farmers who sequester carbon. These are all part of the Climate Safe California policy platform that we believe is essential to get us to net negative by 2030. And Kurt will talk more about that in just a moment. I'd also like to invite everybody to consider joining us, or just go ahead and join us in Sacramento on Monday, April 18th. We are very excited to be gathering in person for the California Climate Policy Summit. This is going to be a day packed with incredible speakers and action, opportunities for networking that I know we've all been missing over the last couple of years. So I'm going to ask my colleague Nina some point soon to drop a link to the Policy Summit registration into the chat. And we hope you'll all be able to consider joining us there. We do still have opportunities for sponsorships also. I would also like to point out that for the very first time on this webinar series, we're now offering a Spanish translation. Tenemos interpretación en español disponible. So I just want to give brief instructions for those Spanish speakers. Para seleccionar su idioma, si está usando un dispositivo móvil, por favor, toque su pantalla, seleccione 3 puntos, seleccione interpretación de idiomas, seleccione español, seleccione silenciar el audio original, y para finalizar su opción, por favor, seleccione finalizado o listo. Si está utilizando una computadora, verá un globo ubicado en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Por favor, haga clic en el globo, seleccione español, luego seleccione silenciar el audio original. Gracias. And for those of you who do speak Spanish, I apologize if I mangled any of your beautiful language. I'd like to take a moment before we turn to our speakers to thank all of our sponsors. None of this would be possible without the support of all these incredible organizations. And I think if you take a look, Terra Verde, LA Department of Water and Power, Silicon Valley Clean Energy, Peninsula Clean Energy, MCE, Blue Planet Energy, Y Green, the Bay Area Air District, Summit State Bank, Recology, and River City Bank. They're from across the state, across sectors, public and private, and those are the partnerships that we need to continue to build and strengthen in order to achieve our clean energy future. So thank you all of our sponsors, and I especially want to thank Terra Verde for being here today. Ali is one of our speakers. We can't wait to hear from him. I also want to thank all of our promotional partners, many of whom have helped bring all of you here today. So all of these organizations, again, a broad coalition from across the state. This is what we need to do in order to get to where we know we need to go. So thank Move LA, Clean Coalition, Joint Venture Silicon Valley, the Community Environmental Council, Monterey Bay Economic Partnership, Better World Group, Civic Well, formerly known as the Local Government Commission, Acterra, Climate Resolve, California Environmental Voters, and the Center for Sustainable Energy. So thanks to our sponsors and our promotional partners. And on that note, I am now going to turn the mic over to my colleague, Kurt Johnson, who's going to give us some introductory comments. So thanks all again for being here. And Kurt, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Duran. Is that working?
Yes, it is.
So I am here instead of our CEO, Ellie Cohen, who would otherwise be presenting this morning. Just a quick overview on Climate Safe California. First of all, on the slim chance that you missed it, which could be understandable given everything else going on in the world, a couple of weeks ago, the IPCC came out with yet another report. The language was so striking, it's almost worth sort of speaking out loud and reflecting for a moment. Quote, any further delay in concerted global action will miss a brief and rapidly closing window of opportunity to secure a livable and sustainable future for all. This comes sort of on top of recent related reports that have basically had the same information for years now. It's worth noting just last week, Antarctica was reported at 72 degrees higher than normal. And we saw last summer, Portland in the Northwest was 15, 20 degrees hotter than normal. The extremes that have been talked about for years are here now. Our current climate goals are ambitious, but inadequate relative to the current state of science. We need to do a lot more. We're going to pass a dangerous threshold very shortly, much sooner than anticipated this decade, hitting 1.5 degrees C. That's almost 3 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a huge change that's going to be happening very quickly, and all the attendant impacts that we're worried about. When people talk about climate action, it's typical to talk about costs, but frequently missing from those conversations are the costs of inaction, which dwarf some of the costs that we're contemplating relative to reducing the damages from climate change. The nation and the world are looking to California to lead for a climate safe future. Historically, California has been a leader on climate. We are no longer. There are other states or other nations that have more aggressive climate policy. This is the policy deficiency which is addressed in our Climate Safe California initiative started by the Climate Center, the goal of which is to, by 2025, have California enact the policies required by science to dramatically cut emissions, inspiring global action. Most of the current targets in state policy are tied to 2045, which is way too late, 15 years too late. Actually, this is referencing a executive order issued by Governor Brown in 2018 that was seeking to get us to carbon negative by 2045. Just in terms of bad news politically, there was an effort legislatively in Sacramento last year to codify that 2045 target, which is way too late, which failed to clear the California legislature. So we have a huge political challenge before us. Sorry, I'm having trouble advancing the slides. So in terms of the guiding principles of Climate Safe California, policy needs to be based on the latest science. It needs to ensure a just transition for fossil fuel workers. And people don't realize we're an oil and gas state in a big way. And obviously prioritize climate justice and make sure that our climate policies and programs are prioritizing the communities that are suffering the most. What are some of the policies required to get us to where we need to go by 2030? Accelerate the phase out of fossil fuel, scale up nature-based sequestration. We have a related bill, I'm going to talk about it in a minute, that was just introduced, sponsored by the Climate Center. We need to invest in community resilience, which is what we're here to talk about today. The Climate Center is also a sponsor of related legislation, which you're going to hear about from Destiny in a minute, SB 833, authored by Senator Dodd. And finally, you need to fund climate action with tens of billions of dollars per year and leverage private sector money. Things you can do today. If you haven't already, please endorse Climate Safe California on the website noted here. Basically, it is calling upon state policy to accelerate climate action timelines commensurate with the climate science. Take you just a couple minutes to click on that and add your name as an endorser to Climate Safe California. This is just a brief word about the sequestration legislation just introduced in the last couple of weeks, sponsored by the Climate Center. More information about that will be available at the California Climate Policy Summit taking place in Sacramento, April 18th. As I mentioned, last year, we failed to get a simple majority to codify a 2045 target. In order to succeed in climate policy, we need an army of concerned citizens coming to Sacramento to lobby our legislators, urging them to act at the speed with which the climate requires us. So please go on their website. You can register for the policy summit as noted on the website here. And there is also a lobby day immediately following on April 19th, for which there is no fee. And we need as many people as possible to come to Sacramento in a month and lobby our legislature to take action on climate now. And with that, back to you, Doron.
Thank you so much, Kurt. Excellent job, and I really appreciate you covering so much in such a short amount of time. We really do urge everyone to join over 1,500 elected officials, business leaders, and others who've endorsed Climate Safe California. And why it's so important will be made very, very clear by our fabulous array of speakers here today. So our first speaker to give us an overview of community energy resilience is the Climate Center's own Destiny Rodriguez. Destiny, I'd like to invite you to join the conversation and share your presentation.
Thank you so much, Doron. Let me just go ahead and share screen. All right, one moment. Let me just, there we go. Well, good morning, everyone. Bienvenidos. My name is Destiny Rodriguez. I am the Regional Community Relations Manager for the Climate Center. And I'm here today to talk to you about community energy resilience and why it is so important. Well, community energy resilience works to accelerate the development of new and clean energy systems. This means they're more affordable, they're reliable, they're equitable. Very importantly, they're safe. And even more importantly, they're local. These energy systems will increase local capacity for accessing new renewable energy. Oops, let me get there. So, I don't know if you all can see that, but hopefully not. Oh, let me go back. All right. So currently our state our state resiliency plan is to rely mainly on diesel generators. Diesel generator backup is very damaging to our air quality and to our public health. Breathing in diesel fumes and exposure to diesel can cause potential respiratory issues. And where I live and work within the Central Valley, this is not a solve to the problem. This actually adds to the problem that we already have. So for many of you, if you are not aware of the pollution in the Central Valley, we have an abundance of air quality issues. And I can tell you that on a bad air day, if we have a power outage and we have diesel generators as a backup, that is not a good thing for public health. It is not a good thing for communities. And it is not an efficient solve for this problem. If we want healthier and thriving communities, we need clean energy. Microgrids are an efficient solve because they help decarbonize. They minimize the need for fossil fuel generation, even during peak hours. And it's reliable. And again, local energy. This helps to reduce the demand on the grid, which, as we all know what happened in Texas, we can avoid that here in California. And we need transmission grid infrastructure, which is where microgrids and clean energy can help build this local grid infrastructure. And this also empowers marginalized communities, such as the community that I live in within Fresno. Having reliable clean energy is a necessity. It is crucial especially for Valley residents. When our summer hits, we have triple-digit temperatures. Imagine having triple-digit temperatures and no power. And also imagine having triple-digit temperatures compounded with existing air quality problems from fossil fuel vehicles and wildfires. Every year we have a wildfire, and that smoke sits here, and Valley residents breathe that. It becomes unsafe for us to go outside, which also brings me to why we need vehicle grid integration. We need to accelerate the adoption of EVs by providing revenues for owners. We can help reduce the cost of electricity to ratepayers by reducing congestion on existing infrastructure. We need to build new fossil fuel-free electricity generation. And we also need to support decarbonization by providing more solar, more grid services. Reducing emissions from the transportation sector is crucial. We need to improve grid resilience and shift to EVs so we can have more reliability. And also, we need to build upon the existing state's EV policy. In the picture you can see this is actually Fresno on a bad air day. And no, that's not a filter. That is the amount of particulate matter that happens to be in our air on an unhealthy day. The other is a clean, beautiful mountain range that you can't see in the first picture, but we do have mountains. And this is again why we need to phase out fossil fuels. Just yesterday, our Fresno County Board of Supervisors asked the governor for oil expansion. This is a step backwards, and we must look forward. So the Climate Center is working on a bill called Community Energy Resilience Act. And we've already have a lot of great support for this. This is going to provide existing framework technological assistance for local government to create their own energy resilience plans. So we would have reliable, affordable, equitable, and safe local planning for energy resilience. This is going to help so many communities, including the community that I live in. And the great part is people, neighborhoods, businesses, they can all come to the table to help develop this plan. Community Choice Energy is also an alternative energy provider and can also help with building this new community energy resilience that we very much need in our state. Also, we have many, many state funds that are coming down the pike, and I'm so excited to share that and to hear from the rest of our speakers. The opportunities that are coming, we have $3.7 billion for climate resilience and $10 billion for zero EVs. This will bring so much to the Central Valley and to the state of California. There is a need for us to look forward and to think about the future generations and not to look backwards. Also, if you are all interested in the things that I'm talking about and the subject matter today, we are going to have a community energy resilience planning webinar series that I'm very excited to share. This is going to be starting in May. May 25th is our first date. And this will go through October. And so you can learn about additional funding sources as they drop, what kind of community energy resilience hubs that you could potentially build in your local community. And you can also hear stories from others that have gone through this process or are currently going through the process, hear about challenges and successes. And I hope so much that I can all see you there in May. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and stop share.
Thank you, Nina. Thank you, Destiny, for that great presentation and covering so much important ground very briefly and so concisely. So we really appreciate it. I do wish quickly before we turn to our next speaker, I'd just like to mention to everybody, please do put your questions in the Q&A. We urge you all to ask as many questions as you have. You can use the chat for sort of informational stuff, but the Q&A is a great place to put your questions. After our speakers have concluded, right around 10:45 or 10:50 more likely, we're going to turn to a conversation and your questions will be crucial to that. So please do put your questions in the Q&A for all the speakers and we will get to them later in the webinar. Now we want to turn to the important topic at hand. Investing in climate action and investing in community energy resilience is the overall framing of this conversation. So I'm really happy to have Saharnaz Mizarzad with us today. She is the Director of Community Investment and Planning at the Strategic Growth Council. And we're very happy you could be here today, Saharnaz. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Doran. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for inviting me here. Excited to be here. As Doran mentioned, my name is Saharnaz Mirzazad. I'm Deputy Director of Community Investment and Planning at the Strategic Growth Council. I would like to share a couple of slides with you. Let me share my screen. Do you see my screen?
Yes, it looks good.
Okay, great. So before diving into some of the available state money for climate resilience, especially in the energy area, which I will build on Destiny's presentation, I would like to go over who I'm representing here. I know that the California Strategic Growth Council is not a very well-known entity in the government, so want to make sure that you know who we are and what we do and what our goal is in the state government. So across OPR and SGC, various program policy initiatives and policy terms, our shared goal is building thriving and resilient California communities and have a set of shared priorities, land use and planning, community partnership and investment, research and resilience, and cross-agency coordination to achieve this. SGC is technically housed under Governor's Office of Planning and Research, which was established in the 1970s. But we are relatively a new entity within the government. SGC was established in 2008 by statute to coordinate programs and initiatives across cabinet level agencies to advance California's climate, transportation, and conservation and equity goals. Just an overview of how we are organized. OPR is a member of the governor's cabinet and brings the critical land use and planning lens to the governor's office and legislators. SGC is uniquely positioned to advance cross-agency coordination as it brings together multiple agencies as a part of its council structure. Each has direct ties to the legislators and the governor's office, and from an administrative perspective, SGC sits within OPR, but is accountable to its council members as shown on the slides. As you can see, we have a state transportation agency, Department of Food and Agriculture, California Natural Resources, Office of Planning and Research, Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency, and Environmental Protection Agency secretaries that sit on the council. There are 3 public members appointed by Senate, Assembly, and the governor that also serve on the council. So, as you know, California faces a number of critical challenges: climate change, inequity, and housing deficit. Working to create a California for all through our diverse planning and policy and programmatic portfolio, that's what we see the SGC roles to be in the government. And how we do that? We have basically 4 priorities that we build on to kind of like build on our unique strength. And where we are today, there are 4 cross-cutting priorities that unify our team: the whole government coordination, climate research and multi-level resilience, community partnership and investment, and land use management and planning. Given that today's topic, I will only focus on community partnership and investment, and I'll have a deep dive into that. Specifically a program, Transformative Climate Communities program, that I know it has been an interest for this group. We have multiple investment programs across SGC. As I mentioned, Transformative Climate Communities program, Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities program, and a couple other programs that will will be standing up pretty soon, climate resiliency centers that might be in your interest. So what is Transformative Climate Communities Program? It's a community-led transformation to enable the California communities most impacted by pollution to choose their own goals, strategies, and projects to reduce greenhouse gas emission and local air pollution. So far, we have awarded $230 million in TCC grants, and we have a multi-year budget that was passed in the last budget, 2021 and 2022 budget, $422 million over 2 years. We have a current NOFA that's open, $105 million for 3 implementation grants award, and a total of approximately $1.2 million for 4 planning grant awards. What does TCC do? So TCC incorporates project types, including affordable housing, active transportation, transit, energy efficiency, and many other type of project infrastructure into neighborhood level investment. And we look into it in a systematic level. And what is making it unique from other state funding, it's TCC designs ensures that investments reflect the community vision and goals by emphasizing 3 transformative elements to maximize benefits and to minimize unintended harm. So we are looking into investment as a whole package, not only built infrastructure, but also social infrastructure. So we simultaneously, while we are investing in built infrastructure, we also invest in the community engagement, workforce development plan, and also anti-displacement measures. As I mentioned, the TCC funds different type of infrastructure. It's a very long list of the projects that can be funded under TCC, but the ones that might be in your interest, in the energy area, we fund solar PV systems, single family low-income housing, multi-family affordable housing, household weatherization program, energy efficiency measures, water efficiency appliances, EV charging infrastructure, and community microgrids. I have a couple of examples here. Stockton Rising is one of the projects that we have invested in. It's integrated workforce training and energy resiliency projects in South Stockton is a very interesting part of this application. They awarded $10.8 million. Half of the 10 projects are for energy resilience. And the climate careers, energy and water efficiency provides energy efficiency measures for 12 households, LED smart thermostat, kitchen, bathroom areas, and 56 pre-apprentices job opportunities. And Stockton Energy for All, solar, provides solar for 108 households and 3 multi-family affordable housing, as you can see in this map. Transform Fresno is another project that we awarded $66.5 million for 20 projects. There is a net zero affordable housing project in the package. We're funding solar PV systems, 5 on the 5 housing authority sites, and 200 low-income homes. Energy efficiency and solar water heaters in 170 homes, and EV charging stations, 42 of them, on affordable housing and community sites. Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities Program is another program that also might be in your interest. The goal is to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, strengthen the economy, improve public health, and impact disadvantaged communities. We do that through investing in sustainable affordable housing, urban greening, access to public transportation, promoting zero emission vehicles, and active transportation. This program has continuous appropriation to Greenhouse Gas Reduction Fund. 20% of each auction goes to this program. And the last auction that we were able to award, we awarded $800 million to different communities across California. As you can see, under sustainable affordable housing, renewable energy and ZEV charging infrastructure are eligible projects. But overall, the program has a portfolio of close to $2.5 billion right now. I also wanted to point out a couple other opportunities in the 2021 and 2022 package. Department of Community Services and Development has a low-income weatherization program that was basically received $50 million over 2 years. And our community resiliency centers, which has $100 million over 2 years to invest in community resiliency hubs and providing support for the communities that are lacking that basic infrastructure. We are currently standing up that program, and hopefully we will be able to have some sort of solicitation early next year, which we are hoping to see a lot of applications for. Outside of my portfolio, also wanted to point out that in the energy package 2022-2023, the governor proposed $922 million for equitable building decarbonization, which I'm sure is in your interest area, and we'll see how it rolls out in the final budget package. With that, thank you so much for your time, and I'm happy to answer any questions after the presentations are done. Thank you.
Thank you, Sahanaz. That's amazing how much work your office and your organization is doing to support these important programs. So thank you for that. And I encourage everyone to please drop your questions for Sahanaz and for Destiny into the Q&A. Once again, we will be turning to a Q&A session after our next couple of speakers. So we'd love to get your thoughts and your engagement. So please do keep dropping those questions in the Q&A. We'll get to as many of them as we can. Now I'd like to introduce our next speaker, speaking about some specific case studies in frontline communities. I'd like to welcome the Executive Director of Grid Alternatives, Jaime Alonzo. Bienvenidos, welcome Jaime. I look forward to hearing what you have to say, please.
Hello, good morning everyone, or good afternoon if you're in the Midwest or East Coast. I'm gonna go ahead and share my screen. Hopefully everyone can see it. Sharing now.
Looks good, Jaime.
Great. So good morning, everyone. As Doron mentioned, my name is Jaime Alonzo. I serve as the Executive Director for Grid Alternatives in the Inland Empire region. The Inland Empire consists of Riverside, San Bernardino, Inyo counties. It includes all tribal lands within those county boundaries. Before I get started, just wanted to say a little bit about me. I was born and raised in an unincorporated area of Riverside County in the Coachella Valley, just north of the Salton Sea. Those of you who are familiar with this region know that many visit this area in cooler months and then just go ahead and disappear on the hotter months when temperatures can climb into the 120-degree range. That wasn't a choice for my family, though. Instead, my parents endured the hot summer months working the fields during the day and sleeping under swamp coolers at night. As kids, we found adventure in the wilderness and a little bit of toughening up when getting to the nearest patch of grass meant enduring the scalding sun-kissed soil underneath our bare feet. I would eventually leave the region and the region I called home and go on to practice law as a trial attorney and work on policy in the DC metro region. But 3 years ago, I returned home to lead Grid's Inland Empire office, which is situated in the city of Riverside. My hope for our gathering today is for each of you to leave with an understanding of Grid and its work, particularly with respect to energy resilience in vulnerable communities here in the Inland Empire. Here's an overview of what we're going to be discussing, what we're going to be going over today. It's really just 3 parts: an intro about Grid, go into resiliency, go over some case studies, features, lessons learned. It'll be about 7 slides, and then some takeaways. So about Grid, Grid was established in 2001 by Erica Mackey and Tim Sears. They're professional engineers that were driven by a simple idea that clean energy and electricity from the sun should be available to everyone. Grid IE's office was established in 2011. So last year we celebrated our 10-year anniversary. And it was established under the leadership of Bambi Tran, who now serves as our Vice President of Regions. Today, Grid is a leading voice in low-income solar policy and the nation's largest nonprofit renewable energy installer, serving families throughout California, Colorado, the Mid-Atlantic region, tribal communities, and internationally in Nicaragua, Mexico, and Nepal. Our mission is to build community-powered solutions to advance economic and environmental justice through renewable energy. We envision a rapid, equitable transition to a world powered by renewable energy that benefits everyone. The 3 areas of impact we track and measure are people, planet, and employment. These are our triple bottom line. To date, we've installed solar PV systems on over 22,000 homes, over 180 community facilities, resulting in an estimated $590 million in lifetime energy savings. These installed systems have produced about 2.4 gigawatts of energy and 1.6 million tons of greenhouse gas reduction, which is equivalent to about a little over 300,000 cars removed from the road. We're talking about combustible cars. Grid's integrated workforce training programs have resulted in over 32,000 individuals trained, amounting to 293 hours trained with the support of over 300 job training partners. Energy resilience. Extreme weather events around the globe and here in California have destroyed homes and communities. Everyone, I think, is indisputable. These disruptive events affect public health and contribute to deaths and displacement and pose a unique challenge for communities that have less capacity and fewer resources to cope with, adapt to, or recover from extreme weather events. Our goal is to ensure that the new energy economy we help create is led and created by economic and environmental justice communities. This can only happen with public and private investments that support resiliency projects for these communities. Today, I want to highlight 3 resiliency projects, 2 that are complete and 1 that is underway. All 3 projects are sited on tribal lands, but before providing a summary of these 3 projects, I'd like to note a non-tribal project, a noteworthy project. It's our Vista Verde project, which is a new affordable housing development in the city of Ontario, which is in San Bernardino County. That's funded with TCC dollars through the Ontario Shines Award. This is a 211 kilowatt ballasted rooftop and carport system and is our largest multifamily TCC funded project in the city of Ontario, and will provide energy savings to over about 100 tenants, reducing their total rent burden. Noted here are just some non-construction features of these projects that made them successful resiliency projects. These are collaborative action, participation by frontline community members, focusing on critical facilities, making sure that local control was completed, engagement, education, and job training. I'll go ahead and highlight some of the lessons and challenges for each project in each case study. So at the top, we have the Chemehueve microgrid. So in 2019, UCR in collaboration with Grid and other partners, including Primus Power that supplied the battery and SunPower that supplied the modules, installed a 90 kilowatt solar PV carport microgrid system for the Chemehueve Indian Tribe Community Center on the Chemehueve Reservation in Lake Havasu, which is in San Bernardino County. The project was made possible with funding from the California Energy Commission's Electric Program Investment Charge, EPIC program. While there were several project goals, the primary motivation was to improve resilience by addressing prevention of power disruption. Electric power to the tribe is provided by a single Edison substation, and utility data collected indicated that the main circuit serving the Chemehueve tribe experienced a significantly larger number of power interruptions and a significantly longer duration of outages compared to the system-wide, and in particular as compared to San Bernardino District 1. The results of this project were 50% reduction in annual electricity costs, 69 kW peak power reduction after the first year of installation. Most of the challenges were on the technical side, so there were some challenges. Limited storage capacity, long refresh rates in the first unit that was installed, needing to upgrade the cooling system due to overheating. Those are some of the main sort of technical construction aspects that were challenging. So there were several modifications that were made and managed by the UCR project team. The second resiliency project is the historic Sun Anza 1 megawatt ground mount solar array installed by Grid and sited on Santa Rosa Band of Queen Indian land. Funding for this project came by way of an award from the California Department of Community Services and Development with California Climate Investment dollars. As many of you know, CCI is a statewide program that puts billions of cap and trade dollars to work, reducing greenhouse gas emissions, strengthening the economy, and improving public health and the environment, particularly for disadvantaged communities. This project was it's a really exciting project. It was energized in 2021, and we reached full enrollment earlier this year in 2022. It's a historic project with many firsts. It's the first low-income community solar project, the first on tribal lands, the first with an electrical cooperative. As an electric cooperative, as part of GRID's overall deliverables, we provided hands-on paid training to members of the Santa Rosa tribe. They literally helped build this historic project. In terms of challenges, the project was installed during the pandemic, and fabrication of electrical gear to support the 1 megawatt array for this project was delayed over 8 months. And additionally, enrollment of 200 members was not automatic, which is, a lesson learned. I think automatic enrollment is, I think, better by design. It just takes a lot of time to enroll members. With the exception of the 38 tribal members of the Santa Rosa tribe that were automatically enrolled from the date we received permission to operate the system. And just so you know, I'll be going through some photos of these projects as well. So after I'm done summarizing them. The third and final project I want to highlight is one that is currently in contract and in pre-construction. That's the Saboba Fire Station microgrid system, which consists of a 50 kilowatt solar PV carport system that includes a 50 kilowatt Infinity energy storage system as well. UCR will provide technical expertise, research measurements, and evaluation plan and microgrid system integration. GRID is the project lead and primary installer that will provide workforce development and community engagement. Similar to the Chemehueve project, this project is also funded by CEC and is intended to eliminate frequent power outages the Saboba tribe has experienced in recent years. The newly built fire station serves the tribe and the surrounding communities and is subject to the same outages with only costly, highly polluting diesel generators as backup. So currently they use diesel, but once installed, the microgrid will make that diesel generator obsolete. Currently, there's no operational community center within the tribe that can serve as a meeting place with electricity during an episode of an extended grid outage or emergency. This is the Vista Verde project. This is during construction. It's a high-level view. You can see the ballasted system in the foreground and in the background here, the carports, some of which don't yet have, at the point of taking this photo, didn't have arrays yet. This is the Chemehueve microgrid. This is the battery here on the left and the array. You'll notice over here, there's a weathering station as well that was also installed. This is the historic Sunanza low-income community solar project, the first low-income community solar project in the history of the state of California. Just a picture here is the array, as well as some of our tribal trainees that were installed in the racking system that was used to lay the modules. And then lastly, this is architectural rendering and just kind of the site overview of the Saboba Fire Station. This is the project that is currently underway. So just want to end with some takeaways. Just want to make sure and just emphasize the need to prioritize resiliency. We must continue to prioritize investments in resiliency, particularly for communities that are disproportionately affected. And just wanted to leave you all with a reflection, that we are in this place by design. And so the question I have that I leave you with is, if the climate events we are experiencing are a byproduct of the ways in which we have chosen to organize ourselves, how do we move into a new way of being? What must we confront and commit to doing differently in order to create a near future where all of humanity is recognized and valued? Thank you for your time. I've listed points of contact here, including myself, Lisa Castellone, who's our tribal program manager and who was instrumental in seeing those 3 projects through, including the one that's currently underway with Saboba, and our Director of Strategic Initiatives, Dan Dumovich, who was integral in submitting applications for the rewards that funded the projects I went over today. So with that, I'll turn it back over to you, Duran.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Jaime, and thank you for the work that GRID does. We're proud to count GRID as one of our partners in the work that we do together in Sacramento and elsewhere. So thank you so much for being here. Please do continue to ask your questions in the Q&A, and we will get to those just as soon as we get through our next speaker, who I'm very excited is here with us today. Terra Verde Energy is also a critical partner of the Climate Centers, more importantly, does amazing work in a variety of areas, specifically around community energy resilience. Ali Cheresaz is the CEO of Terra Verde Energy, and I'm very happy you could be here today, just following the Nowruz New Year. So happy New Year to you, and please give us your thoughts and what is Terra Verde working on these days, and what are the barriers, and how can we expand community energy resilience? Let's get to it.
Thank you very much. Good morning, everyone. Appreciate the intro, the partnership with the TCC, and the opportunity to be here. Very grateful for all your good work. Allow me to share my screen, and we'll get right to it. So our presentation today is for us really a chance to share with the audience on how we have been working with our partners, our customers in California to solve the challenges for deploying energy resiliency projects. And that's primarily leveraging solar as the foundational energy source to providing the backup power that we are so desperately seeking to gain. First, a quick touch on who we are. Terra Verde Energy was founded in 2009. We work primarily with public sector entities, school districts, water agencies, transit agencies, and as well as load-serving entities like the CCAs in California. And our mission has been from the start one of enabling deployment of solar into our grid, and as a result, finding value for solar so that we can help the economic case for making these deployments happen more rapidly and scalably. And the way we have managed ourselves, the way we work our way through deployment of the solar system has been through the lens of first the physics, then the math or the finance. And really that just comes down to, for us to figure out where are loads available that can be offset with solar, and then ultimately figure out the math, the finances that help enable these projects to get executed. And that is the exact same lens we put on when we started to look through how we can provide backup power solutions enabled by pairing battery storage with solar behind the meter at buildings, and figuring out what is the value of this backup power that we are seeking. And there are benefits that we all know we have and people seek to have backup power, having their electricity not be interrupted, but coming up with a way that we can economically prove it using math so we can finance the project is the very simple, narrow lens we put on, which we believe provides value to the conversation to help understand and justify the investment behind a solar plus a battery project. The barriers that exist with quantifying, deploying backup power projects leveraging solar and battery are really in twofold. There's the quantification of the benefits itself. So when we say power interruption, it has a cost to us. What does it actually mean? Besides the inconveniences, besides some of the intangibles that maybe we haven't quite done the math for yet, are there things we can actually identify and calculate? And then ultimately figuring out what are some of the other additional value streams we can bring in to these solar and battery projects that can help collectively finance these endeavors. So more entities can deploy more of these amazing solutions. On the barrier side, when we started to look through it in more detail, really the problem became one of identifying what it is that a solar plus a battery project is providing as a benefit, identifying and calculating those values and actually accounting for it. And we're using the word accounting purely from a math sense. And can we put these as numbers on an Excel spreadsheet and show that to an audience? And then once we had the items identified and the accounting figured out, then actually figuring out how can we standardize this data collection and this calculation so that the math that we show to one school district can scale to all the other schools. So we're using the same verbal style guide, the same vocabulary. So when we talk about the cost of business interruption or the cost of a school outage, those words mean the same thing. Those words trigger the same definition for everyone so that we can all understand and rally around the standard of the cost of a day of power interruption to a water agency, a school, a hospital. What is that? So we can start to build some standards around it, some heuristics, so these conversations can happen more rapidly and we can engage more around the solutions that are being presented. And the lack of those identification methods, accounting methods, those standards was really what was hurting the progress that we sought to make in figuring out how to deploy these systems and have the conversations with these public entities to show them the benefits for investing in these assets. Here's a case study on how we went about it and did one of our very first projects on calculating the benefits or the avoided cost of business interruption. This was at a school district in Northern California that had experienced power outages. After extensive interviews and discussions and trying to understand what is the pain points regarding power outage, one area that became known to us was that there is a requirement that if the refrigeration facility at a school experiences a 6+ hour outage, they are required to throw away all the food that they have been storing. In this specific example, for this school district, that accounted for about $250,000 per year loss every time they had a 6+ hour outage. In Northern California, we have had some of those in the past few years, and there is expectations that more of these will happen each year. When we put the math together for just this school district and the two high schools that had the kitchens that served, I think about 11 schools altogether, on a 15-year projection of these costs, we calculated nearly a $2.2 million cost avoidance in terms of repurchasing the food that got thrown away, had to be purchased again after the outage came back. That avoided cost alone is one of the big drivers for why the school district decided to proceed with this project, realizing that they are now gaining that security that they will be able to provide power to the school if at least one time per year there's an outage that is longer than 6 hours. The other economics of this project are shown on the right-hand side, just to run through the quick math. The capital expenditure is how much cash out of pocket was initially needed to procure the systems. That's $2.8 million. There's the SGIP benefits that come from the state. Those are incentives for batteries that some are for backup, some are for regular batteries. Altogether, that's about $1 million. There's some operational benefits costs, operational expenses for operating the batteries, paying for maintenance and monitoring services. The utility bill savings are about $400,000. We'll get there in a moment as to why these benefits are on the low side for a system of this size. The business interruption, that's the cost of replacing the food that they're now avoiding, which is the big hefty benefit that comes to this project at $2.2 million. And overall, the net benefits of this project are positive. It's not a huge number, but it is a positive number. And that was one of the first cases where we used physics and math to figure out the value for providing backup power to a school district in this specific example. And that was the start of us going down this path. And ultimately, what we summarize the findings into is we wanted to have a name and a lens to look at value of resiliency. And we really specifically focused on the economic value that we could calculate for these projects, that we could put in front of a entity and show them why they're investing in the backup power side of the project. Solar alone has certain benefits, but can give you backup power. Batteries are there to provide that. Batteries have some grid benefits, some electricity cost savings benefits, but the costs are still very high. Backup power is what we're after, which requires additional investment into the technologies, for example, including an automatic transfer switch, load management system. These are additional costs that need to be justified. So we use this economic value of resiliency model, which specifically calculates the benefits to each entity on a per building, per the use case that it provides to help show the benefits of these projects. How we do EVOR from a high level perspective, we looked at what we're really doing by deploying the solar plus battery plus the associated system to create that backup power. Is really we're doing two things. We're either avoiding the cost of otherwise applicable solutions, or we are adding benefits by avoiding any costs that happen because of power interruption. What that trickles down to is on the avoided cost of otherwise applicable solution, that's really asking the question of if you as the building owner, as the school district, as the transit agency are seeking backup power, what other solutions are there in the marketplace for you to go and get that backup power? And by and large, these go after diesel generators. It's a technology as a society we've known, and as a society we're learning we don't want to be doing anymore. But those solutions are available in the marketplace. They do have a cost for the equipment, for the installation. There's operations and maintenance and annual testing to make sure the diesel gensets are operational and ready to go. You have to have fuel stored, and access to fuel during a long-term outage is something that needs to be solved for. And ultimately, operating permits. And California is doing a great job of increasing the cost of these operating permits so that the cost for maintaining and running diesel generators continues to increase to cover for some of the other expenses that my colleagues here in this webinar have talked about, the health costs that are not really accounted for. The picture we saw that Destiny showed of Fresno with the smog, those are costs. Those are people's health that are being endangered. If somebody is getting sick, that means they're going to the hospital. That means there are health costs to society that we're all bearing. That means that person is suffering pain. That means they're not working. There are costs to society that these operating permits need to capture, and we may argue that they're not doing enough for how much damage there are happening as a result of the emissions from these devices. On the avoided cost of power interruption, that's really the business interruption numbers. Sometimes there's electrical equipment damages that if they shut down too early or too quickly, there's damage to their circuit boards. A lot of times schools have to invest in a lot of uninterruptible power solutions, UPS devices to prevent these damages. But productivity losses, perishable spoilage, those are all costs that are having to be paid for because of power outages. So accounting for these is how we get to a place that we can start to account for the value of backup power. Now, it is one thing to figure out and identify the value of resilience, which is what we've talked about so far, but often enough, that's not enough to finance a project. The math doesn't stack up even with reaching in and trying to figure out the avoided cost of gensets or the avoided cost of business interruption. So the other way that we have added value to these projects is by looking at the other side of the economic coin, which is On one side, you have savings, where solar provides electricity bill savings, as we know, but then looking at revenue solutions. And renewable energy certificates is a way that a lot of entities that own their own solar facilities or buy solar from a solar provider can ask to have their renewable energy certificates assigned to themselves, and those can be sold in the marketplace for an annual revenue that increasingly over the years have picked up in numbers. I remember 10 years ago, the value for one renewable energy certificate was about $3 for a behind the meter project at the highest end. Now we're seeing numbers in the $10 to $13 per REC, and those are starting to show meaningful revenue streams in the form of cash to these entities. Same thing on the battery side. There is savings that could be had on the retail electricity bill by peak demand reduction, load shifting, energy arbitrage. But there's also now more exciting revenue opportunities that are coming by leveraging these batteries in grid services like DRAM, and also deploying these batteries under DER programs. And that is the other side of the benefit that we try to highlight here, which is in order to have projects deployed, the physics really come into play to figure out where we can deploy projects, but then ultimately it's the math that proves the financials. And there are many applications where there are facilities that could install solar, but because they have a low usage, the solar deployment that can be built there is not financially feasible to help carry the cost of the project. Fire stations are a good example of that. Sometimes their low profiles and space availability does not lend them well to a solar installation. In many other cases, like the case of the high school we showed you earlier, the rate schedule that they are on do not lend themselves well to providing benefits from a battery system. Batteries generally provide value by reducing the max demand. And there are rate schedules that certain customers are on, primarily in California, in PG&E territory, that are on A6 rate because they installed solar some time ago. These rate schedules don't have demand charges, so batteries cannot provide a demand reduction benefit. At best, they can provide some energy arbitrage load shifting, which is not a lot of money. And then under the current rules, if you have a solar project and you want to add a battery in order to take advantage of backup power solutions, you're not able to take the benefit of the investment tax credit, which is currently at 26%. Now, had you installed solar and battery together, you would get the 26% offset right off the bat for both solar and battery. But because these were done in a disaggregated fashion, you did solar first, then battery, the battery project has to be paid for 100% upfront. The tax credits do not apply here. And that hurts the economics of projects for people that led the way by installing solar, and now they want battery as it's becoming technologically available.
Ali, I need to interrupt. I'm sorry, I just need to interrupt for just one moment. Thank you. Our time is over, so if you could try and wrap this up very soon, I would really appreciate it.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
For the delay. So the way we solved on figuring out more value from batteries was by looking beyond the meter and trying to figure out how can these behind the meter solar and battery systems provide value in the wholesale market. And that was through an innovative partnership with California CCA and in collaboration with them to help figure out what are some of the benefits we can provide in the wholesale electricity market where these systems on aggregate that get installed in these geographic regions that every CCA operates can help provide benefits to the CCA on the wholesale market side. And as a result, have the value pie expand so that more benefits can be shared locally with schools, water agencies, buildings that install these systems. We're currently working with a number of CCAs. This program is taking up a lot of interest So we highly recommend public entities to get in touch with the CCAs to collaborate with and figure out what opportunities are available for them, to partner with them on their system installation. Very quickly, some numbers. This is another project example we're working on where a school district is partnering in a broader program with the CCA. And the executive summary of the story is that there are positive benefits and savings that are available to the school, as well as there are positive benefits and savings to the CCA, which means this partnership is providing benefit to everyone, where the sum of the parts is bigger than the individual benefits that each of these would have had on their own. And we're very excited about this program. This is helping us identify through the CCA a lot of opportunities for schools, water agencies, public agencies to identify and deploy solar plus battery backup power projects. I'll pause here. Thank you very much. Apologies for going over.
That's all right. You had a lot of great content there, a lot of details to cover. We appreciate all the work you're doing. And I'm happy to bring all of our speakers back online here for our Q&A. And I just want to point out to everybody, we're going to go till 11:30. We're going to end right at 11:30. I encourage you all to definitely stick around after the Q&A. We've got an exciting action item, something that you can all do to help advance the goals that we're talking about here today. So I'd like to start with a couple straightforward questions, then perhaps move to things that are a little bit more complex and nuanced. But Destiny, first question for you really quickly, if you could you tell us a little bit more about the Community Energy Resilience Planning webinar series? How's that going to differ from this webinar? A couple people are curious about that.
Certainly. So for the Community Energy Resilience Planning webinar, it's more focused on actual planning for community energy resilience hubs and plans within local communities. So we are going to offer an array of speakers. We're still coordinating, getting people confirmed, but we do have our lineup for May 25th. So if people are interested, please click the link, register now. And we will also be offering Spanish translation for those. And I would say that the main difference is that you're going to be hearing personal stories from people that have gone through the process, that are currently going through the process. And also you get to hear the latest, the latest on when certain funding will drop, because it is going to be dropping throughout the year. So if you want to know, be in the know and sign up for the webinar series.
Excellent. Thank you. And that's actually a perfect segue. It's almost like we planned this because the next question is specifically about funding. And I'm going to turn it over to Saharnaz. Saharnaz, there were a couple of questions about what are the eligibility requirements for the funding resources you talked about? Do you use CalEnviroscreen to prioritize that distribution? And where can people go to get a list of all of these fabulous programs and find out how they can apply and hopefully get some money?
Definitely. So each program comes with its own restrictions and requirements based on the source of the funding. For a Transformative Climate Communities program, the source of funding is the Greenhouse Gas Emission Reduction Fund. The statute requires us to focus on the most disadvantaged communities of California, which we use CalEnviroscreen for identifying that, and that means 25% disadvantaged communities of California. For other programs, AHSC doesn't have a restriction, but it's in the statute of, not in the statute, but in the California Climate Investment Fund guidelines, 50% of the funds should go to the low-income disadvantaged communities of California. And the Climate Resiliency Centers doesn't have that requirements, and it will be open to all California communities. You can definitely look into our timeline and grants cycle on the SGC website, which I can put in the chat shortly. And what was the next part of your question? Sorry, Dor.
No, that was it. Where can people go to get the list? So if you drop that in the chat, yeah.
Definitely, I will.
That would be wonderful. Thank you. And I want to bring you into the conversation again in a moment. But first, I want to turn to Jaime. Jaime, like a lot of people are really enthusiastic about what you talked about grid. I think some of the people on the call today, of course, know about your work, but some of the others don't. So thank you for introducing it. Some people were asking, I know you answered this directly, but I just want everyone to hear the answer. Talk a little bit more about grid. you don't just work in the Central Valley and in some of the communities you mentioned. You have a much larger organization than that. Where else is GRID working right now, and how can people find out more about working with GRID or supporting your work?
Sure, thanks, Duran. Yeah, so GRID, the projects that I discussed today were all located in the Inland Empire region, which includes Riverside, San Bernardino, and Inyo counties. But GRID has offices throughout the state of California, as well as in Colorado, the Mid-Atlantic region. We have we have also a tribal program that works in tribal communities throughout the country outside of the state of California. And we have a growing international program that includes projects in Baja California and Mexico, in Nepal, and in Nicaragua. So there's a lot of other resiliency projects that we are working on outside of the Inland Empire region, but the three that I highlighted today are situated and sited in Inland Empire. And I did link our website that has a list of all of our regions and contact information for that office.
Awesome. Thank you so much for clarifying more about all the different places where you work. Ali, the next question I have is for you. And this is like a very specific one. Marshall asked this question specifically. So thank you, Marshall, for asking the question. The school case study that you mentioned, Ali, appears to require incentives in order to pencil out. Is that always going to be the case? Are we always going to need incentives? Do these programs pencil out without those incentives? And if it's the case that we need incentives, like how do we get to the point where they just pay for themselves in a logical way?
Yeah, good question. That project did need incentives. It was about $1 million, I believe, of SGIP funding. And that has really been the name of the game for all solar, all clean energy development deployment in California and elsewhere. We have always had to work hard to find ways to identify economic value from cost of electricity, now backup power benefits, but the technology costs are high and batteries are still quite pricey. They are getting more expensive this year due to supply chain challenges we've been having. And we're also undercounting the values that societally these technologies provide. Talk about the cost of permits for running a diesel generator. Those are going up, but are they really covering all the costs that our society pays for? I don't think so. But in lack of having access to a more, call it, fair market pricing and fair signals, we have to go and find any and all sources of funding that's available. And organizations like SARNAS, SGC could be a great source to help us find the gap that we need to get these projects penciled financially.
Thank you so much. Excellent. I'd like to bring in my colleague, Kurt Johnson. I believe he has something he'd like to add to this particular part of the conversation. Kurt?
Yeah, so a couple points. First one, the SGIP has had something called the Equity Resilience Program, which has paid the highest amount of incentives for storage to communities that had, 2 or more PSPS shutoffs and also were in disadvantaged communities. That was a big giant chunk of ratepayer cash that was allocated through state legislation. Problems include most of those funds are already depleted. And second of all, that those funds were from ratepayers, not from the state general fund. And so it's kind of hard to keep on going to the ratepayers asking for more money. So part of the things that are part of the Climate Center's legislative and regulatory agenda includes we want to see a big chunk of dollars going from the general fund to systematically and aggressively support development of community energy resilience across disadvantaged communities across the state. So we've been working on a budget request letter, and various other environmental justice organizations throughout the state have been essentially making the same request, but we're hoping that the state would make even greater investment in these kinds of projects, building on the funds that Saharna has talked about already to support community resilience. Second key point about policy, to Ali's point about having the incentives work correctly. We currently have a pretty big fleet of distributed energy resources in California already. We have behind the meter batteries. We have 1 million electric vehicles on the roads already. If you combine the existing fleet of behind the meter batteries, both sort of, in people's homes as well as the cars that people are driving today, it's actually a massive, largely untapped resource, which could essentially create an alternative mechanism to keep the lights on in particularly, in peak periods. If we can create a policy environment in California where instead of burning natural gas, which is what we're doing between the evening peak and 4 and 9 p.m., if we were sort of tapping into the existing base of distributed batteries located across the state, we could, stop burning the gas and create an additional revenue and value stream for all the people that have electric cars or have batteries, including schools. So it's really, these are policy choices that need to be made in Sacramento in order to better fund these kinds of projects, because the existing funds have been depleted. And then on a sort of utility regulatory scheme, we need to systematically figure out how to pay the people that own these existing distributed resources for the value which they can provide to the grid. So lots more that could be said there, but a couple key points. These are policy choices that are currently pending in Sacramento, as well as at the Public Utilities Commission.
That's fantastic. Thank you, Kurt. I'd like to move from the specific to something a little bit more general, because we had several questions sort of asking a similar kind of thing. So I'd like to kind of go around and give each of you guys a chance to comment on the following question and perhaps give some concluding thoughts as we approach the end and our very exciting action item that I urge you all to stick around for. So I'm going to first say Claudia from the California Desert Coalition. She asked about balancing expansion of solar with the capacity of those desert landscapes to sequester carbon, and asks, is there a conflict between the expansion of commercial solar and the preservation of rural and desert ecosystems? John Shribs puts it another way. If we have some open space, what should we do? Plant native grasses and trees for carbon sequestration, or should we construct large ground level solar panels? I acknowledge that this may not be a completely binary choice, but I think it gives us an opportunity to think about balancing carbon sequestration and solar expansion, desert landscapes. I'd just love to get all of your thoughts on this. Perhaps I would start with you, Jaime. You guys work a lot in some of these desert landscapes. What are your thoughts about these trade-offs and how we should think about them?
Sure. So I think it's easy to kind of get into a binary mindset with respect to this issue and see it as an either or. I think the key is, for us, at least at GRID, is making sure that there is robust stakeholder engagement around the decision to build out a solar array on vacant land, making sure we have a sense of who's the primary beneficiaries of that system, what the impacts are in terms of the natural environment of that system. Most of our projects are built on residential existing structures, so we don't do a lot of things out in the desert. Larger projects like the project I mentioned, the Sunanza project, was sited on Santa Rosa tribal lands, but that was done with permission of the tribal council in consultation with them in terms of the impacts that would have on the landscape. So I'd say, it's very important to make sure that whatever decision is being reached in a collaborative fashion with a mind towards an effort to just get input from those who are going to be most impacted by the decision.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Ali, I saw your head nodding. I have a sense you may have further thoughts to contribute to this part of the conversation. What are your thoughts?
I do, and that's a great question. I'll tell you the way I look at this opportunity. I did start my career in solar, primarily starting with the large-scale desert solar deployments, and saw the challenges firsthand on the environmental side, transmission side. After a 2-year experience there, I made a decision to go into distributed solar, primarily by looking at the overlay of solar irradiance and human population. And that Venn diagram is pretty much overlapping in a really interesting way, which is the sun shines where we have a lot of people that live. So let's go utilize those spaces that are already built environments, add solar on all the rooftops as much as we can, and generate power at the source. And that journey has really propelled us forward. And one reason why we love working with CCAs is that they share that mission of doing local deployments, creating local jobs, creating clean energy at the source where we live. And what I encourage us to do is, as Jaime said, let's not take the either-or mentality. Let's go make the case that deploying local solar, local clean, resilient energy sources in our communities makes the best sense, makes the most financial sense. It's the best thing for our society. Other generators that are in the solar industry and are building utility-scale solar projects in desert land, they're not our competitors. They can be our collaborators to help come in and fund some of these projects, deploy their assets here. So our mission is to help create these opportunities and make them compelling within our cities and our communities. And if we can go and show that that makes the most sense, I think we'll get a lot of allies that come along the way with us.
Thank you, Ali. Really appreciate your thoughts. And Destiny, I would just like to give you an opportunity to make any final thoughts before about this question or anything else, and before we turn it over to Nina for our action item, give people a chance to actually make a difference here today. Destiny?
Definitely. I agree with both Jaime and Ali. I think we do need to start balancing and working with the land and working with looking in instead of out. There's a lot of opportunities for buildings to have solar, rooftop solar. There's a lot of areas, brown zones, and we need to take advantage of this and work with local governments. So again, I hope to see all of you at the resilience planning webinar so we can talk in more detail about all of these potential solutions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Destiny and Ali and Jaime and Saharnaz. All of you have been great. Saharnaz, I'd just like to give you an opportunity also to make any final comments before we turn it over to Nina for our action item. Saharnaz?
Thank you so much. Really appreciate inviting us to this webinar. We are very proud to serve the California communities. Please stay in touch with us. Sign up for our newsletter. If you have any feedback on our programs, please let us know. We are continuously seeking those feedbacks to make sure that we are filling the gap. We are providing funding for what is really needed on the ground, and looking forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So for now, I'd like to bring my colleague, Nina Turner, into the conversation, because everybody says, well, all of this is really wonderful, but what can I do about it? Well, Nina's got something that you can do right now to help advance clean community energy in Sacramento. Nina, why don't you tell them about it?
Yes, hello everyone. First, I want to thank all of you for participating in today's webinar. Showing up with us here today is one thing, but taking direct action is how we can really make change. So if you haven't already, our first action was endorsing our Climate Safe California platform. So I will drop that link again in the chat. If you have not endorsed, I encourage you to do so. Our second action to take today is sending a message to your state senator in support of Senate Bill 833, which is the Community Energy Resilience Act. This act is sponsored by the Climate Center and was introduced by Senator Bill Dodd in Napa. This bill enables local governments to collaborate with utilities in planning community-level energy infrastructure, such as solar panels and battery storage, so that communities can decide what facilities stay powered during a crisis. So to send your message of support to your state senator, I'm going to drop another link in the chat. And if you did endorse Climate Safe California, it's a very similar process. There's a form just asking for your basic information. Once you fill that out and click submit, your message will be on its way. And I'll give everyone about a minute to do that. It's a pretty fast action. And while you do that, I will pass it back to Duran to close us out.
Thank you so much, Nina, and thank you to all of our participants here today. 150, 180 plus. We'll run the numbers a little later. But, you know, we got somewhere close to 200 people. So I want to thank all of the attendees for being a part of this and for caring about these important topics. And many of you are working on these issues day to day. I just want to acknowledge that. I also want to acknowledge that there were a lot of great questions that we were not able to get to. So I want to thank all of you who dropped questions into the question and answer portal, into the chat. The idea of livelihood cost is another way to sort of do an accounting of these kind of projects. Fantastic. There's a lot of great stuff there. I do want to let everybody know that the recording of this webinar, both in its English version and in its Spanish language version, will be made available on our website, as well as all the slide decks that you saw. So if you're frantically scribbling notes, trying to take it all down, don't worry. All of those slides will be available to you also. And you'll receive a follow-up email sometime in the next few days, giving you access to all of those documents and all of those recordings. I want to remind you all that the Climate Center has a variety of programs for you. The planning webinar series that Destiny mentioned, as well as the remaining investing in climate action for jobs, health, and equity webinars that are going to be coming up. And I also want to be sure that you all know once again about our Climate Policy Summit, California Climate Policy Summit, April 18th in Sacramento. It's going to be great to see a lot of you in person. It's going to be wonderful to gather with folks and, you know, share food and drink coffee. We've got a reception. More importantly, we have a lot of amazing speakers who are going to be there. I'd like to thank all of our sponsors, especially Terra Verde and some of the other, many of the other great sponsors who've supported our organization throughout the years, and specifically this webinar series. I want to thank all of our speakers. Ali, thank you so much. Shahadanaz, thank you so much. Jaime, thank you so much. And Destiny, we really appreciate not just what you did here today, but what you do every single day to help advance our common cause of a cleaner and more equitable future. On that note, I just want to tell everybody that I really also want to thank all of you on behalf of all of us at the Climate Center for taking the time to join us. We're 1 or 2 minutes ahead of our conclusion, but at this point, I think I would like to wrap it up. Also, thank you, Linguistica Interpretation, for providing the Spanish language translation. Really appreciate it, Danielle and Jose. Thank you for being here today and being a part of that. And on that note, I want to thank you all for coming. And I want to say I look forward to seeing you at the next webinar or in Sacramento on the 18th. And thank you, Leslie, for your sweet comment, and everybody else who's participated and sent all those comments in the chat. We really appreciate your engagement, and we can't wait to see you all again soon, hopefully in person in Sacramento in just a few short weeks. So once again, on behalf of the Climate Center, thank you for attending, and we'll see you next time. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate it.